Welcome to the Adventures in CRE audio series. Join Michael Belasco and Spencer Burton as they pull back the curtain on everything commercial real estate and introduce you to some of the top minds in the industry. If you want to take your skills to the next level and be part of a growing community of CRE professionals across the world, this is for you.
Welcome back to the Adventures in CRE audio series. This is part 2 of our interview with Jim Spaeth. In this episode, we asked Jim what it really takes to get into top-tier real estate programs, as well as insider tips and ideas for prospective applicants. Let's pick up where we left off.
All right, great. Yeah, so, we talked about the job market. We talked about certain roles within the industry. We talked about, is an MBA right for you or not? So I want to walk it back a little bit. And I want to touch upon, okay, you've heard us talk, maybe you've read our posts about a graduate degree or an MBA. And so now you've decided you want to go back to graduate school, back to get your MBA. So, what is the typical application requirements? And do you have tips that you could give us, that would help potential applicants to present the most competitive application?
Sure. Yeah. So I live and breathe this every day. And, the guidance that I give prospective students, whether they're applying here or any other top school, is you've got to figure out what differentiates you as a candidate. We're all going to require certain things. There's a standardized test score you got to post, GMAT, GRE. And by the way, this isn't the school speaking, this is me speaking, but once you get in and your GMAT and GRE and you post that, nobody in real estate really cares about that, right? They care about you. They care about you as a person. They care about the skills you're going to bring to the job. They care about whether they want you in their shop. They're not going to ask you. I mean, maybe unless you're going to investment banking, they're not going to ask you, oh, okay, Michael, what'd you post in that GMAT or GRE? They don't care. They don't care. So it's one of those hurdles you got to jump through to get into a, top business school. But after that, forget about it. So you've got that, your essays, your interviews, your transcript, your work experience. Like, well, everybody will ask you for that. But at the end of the day, through those essays, through the interview process, through the communications that you have with the school, what you really need to help them understand is why that particular school is right for you. And so, here at Keenan Flagler, obviously we've got a big real estate program. So a lot of the students will present an application package where they're essentially saying, hey, I want to go work in private equity. And UNC Keenan Flagler has a student run, real estate private equity fund. I think that's an extraordinary experiential learning opportunity. I'm coming to Keenan Flagler so I can compete to be on that fund, right? And so our admissions office is kind of used to seeing that and say, okay, this person has spent some time thinking about why Keenan Flagler is the right place for them. That, with that pathway. And by the way, another piece of advice that I give students is, if you're coming in and you're a complete career switcher, it's great to aim for the moon, right? And say, okay, I'm going to go work for Blackstone when I graduate. But every single admissions officer that I know, one of their worst fears is that they bring somebody in who's a great individual, but can't execute on the job that they want to get. And so the student's unhappy because they can't get the job they want. And the folks here are unhappy because there's not a good outcome at the end of the day that we can report. And so, be realistic about that shift that you're going to make and how much time that's going to take. And don't go into the admissions committee, with an essay that says, I was a teacher and now I'm going to work for Blackstone. That's really, really difficult. I'm not saying you can't, but that's really, really challenging. Maybe really, really difficult. I'm not saying you can't, but that's really, really challenging. Maybe, think about some steps along the way. All right, I'm going to go in, I'm going to work in asset management for a little bit, or, I'm going to go work in investment banking, which will take career switchers all day long. I'm going to use that as a stepping stone to private equity longer term. So be realistic in what you're saying. Make sure that you're connecting with the school and what the school's capabilities are. And then, are you a good fit for the school? And that just takes a lot of diligence, right? I mean, going and spending time at that school, talking to the students, talking to the alumni, talking to the staff and the faculty, and seeing whether that culture and that community, fits who you are as a person. Because I can tell you the schools are looking at that too. And, certain schools have different personalities and none are better than others. Geographies influence that and just, the history of the school sometimes influences that. So spend time there and get to know the people and then be able within your essays and your culture, actually is calling to you individually, how it aligns with your goals and your values. That's really, really important. I can't tell you how many times, somebody will send me an essay that they did and they're like, I didn't get in. I'm like, well, you didn't talk about why Keenan Flagler is the right place for you. You could have written this essay for any one of the top 20 business schools, right? It's not differentiated in any way. So take some time, get to know the schools and, figure out how that aligns with what you want to do as a person, and then be able to communicate that effectively, through the entire process. That's really, really important.
That's amazing. So does a lot of this come down to, we're people identify with stories. Are stories a part of that application process as well? I think one of it is their goal, but how much of it goes into that background, that story, like who the person presents themselves as and what they're kind of coming from? Does any of that go into that process?
Yeah.
Does any of that go into that process?
Yeah, clearly stories are what connect us to others and pique interest. So if you've got a great story about how real estate, in this context is interesting to you, whether it's a family connection or some building you came across someplace, somewhere, you should absolutely install that into your essay or weave that into your interview or somehow bring that to the attention of, the admissions committee. Absolutely. But, I don't know that, it's okay, I guess I would say, if you're, a civil engineer and you just think real estate's cool, to just say that. I think it's cool. It would be great for you to kind of put a story behind it, but just for you to be genuine about it and present who you are as a person, I think is paramount to anything. I wouldn't make up stories, to embellish things, to try to entice things. If there's not a great hook there, that's okay. Just say, look, this is why I'm being called to it. I'm not exactly sure. And by the way, MBA programs are a great place to explore multiple, different types of things. So you can definitely say to an admissions committee, I think real estate might be for me. I'm not sure. I'm going to try a couple different things. They're okay with that. You don't have to come in saying, I'm 100% real estate. It's okay if you say it's one area that I want to explore. It's best if you say it's an area I want to explore and here's why.
Mm-hmm. Great.
All right. So Jim, one of the questions I'd like to ask you is let's say you are a potential applicant to UNC, and UNC is the definite school. You have a strong reason for why you want to go there. However, maybe your GMAT scores or your GRE scores aren't quite up to where they should be in order to get into UNC. Yeah. Is there a particular strategy, or is there some advice you could give for students? They took the test maybe. They took the test maybe a couple times and they didn't get there. Do you have any sort of advice or strategies to help increase their chances of getting into the program?
It again.
and again. No, I think, as I alluded to earlier, schools are really interested in candidates who are interested in them. And sometimes that interest will essentially supersede the lack of a credential, whether that credential is a low undergraduate GPA, which of course you can't do anything about, or whether it's a low standardized test score or, some other piece of information that becomes apparent in the admissions process. So, schools, at the end of the day, schools will admit people that they know want to be there and want to contribute to that particular community. So at Carolina, and you were really seriously interested in real estate, my advice to that candidate would be, look, you should tell the admissions committee that you're going to sit there as long as it takes. And as soon as they send you an admissions letter, you're enrolling. Because one of the things that any admissions committee doesn't want to do is admit somebody that doesn't enroll. That, number one, when you admit somebody, it decreases your selectivity, right? So you have to be careful in that. But then if you admit somebody who doesn't enroll, not only decreases your selectivity, but it also decreases your yield rate, which is another, metric that everybody kind of gets scored on. So you definitely, I think if it's a school you're 100% sure, 99% sure that you would enroll in if they admitted you, you should tell the admissions office that. And you should tell the admissions office, I'm going to send you your wait list, but I'm going to check in with you every so often. I'm going to give you updates. If you get promoted at work or there's other things that happen that would, make you an even stronger candidate, you should definitely tell them that when it occurs. Tell them, if you admit me, I'm coming. Now, you shouldn't tell them that if that's not true. because that looks bad on you. But if you can, honestly say that, that's a great strategy. And if you hang around the rim long enough, a lot of times you'll get in, and obviously that sometimes just isn't the case. If you're, posting a score that's 150 points less than their average GMAT score, unless you have some other kind of extraordinary, story to tell, that can be really hard. But if you're on the margin, hang around, tell them that you're coming, keep talking to them, stay engaged, talk to their alumni, see if you can get some additional alumni referrals in. Those are all things that can really help at the end of the day. And I think it's a student's market right now. And what I mean by that is if you look at any of the, any of the stories coming out, if you read like Poets and Quants, right, which is a great website for kind of data around the graduate student market, applications are down, and whether it's cyclical kind of data around the graduate student market, applications are down, and whether it's cyclical or structural, we don't really know that yet, but across the board, apps are down and schools need candidates. So I think it's a great time to be thinking about going back to school, because I think, if you do post a good score and have good work experience, you can kind of almost name your terms. And I think a lot of schools are, discounting tuition for very strong candidates. I know we do for strong real estate candidates. We definitely have fellowships or scholarships, as you might call it, that are specific for real estate students that we want to enroll here.
Got it. So I guess speaking to the other side, so you said that it's a student's market, but you also said that one of the worst outcomes for admissions is if there's a rejection. So I guess what my question really is how do you balance that? I mean, you have the side that says this student checks all the boxes. They're not stellar, but they meet the criteria. But we're not sure if they're going to accept. Like, how much of that is a factor, and how do you communicate as a potential applicant to make sure that you mitigate any of that risk in terms of getting into?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely more of an art than a science here, right? Yeah. And if you're good, if you're a strong applicant, the odds are that you're going to have multiple offers, and to complicate things even more, those offers probably have different timelines associated with them. So, one school might say you have to accept by March 15th, but another school might say it's April 10th, and maybe you might not even hear from the school until like April 2nd, right? So trying to keep as many options open as possible, while at the same time, not burning any bridges can be, it's a real challenge. And I don't know that I've got a great time, not burning any bridges can be, it's a real challenge. And I don't know that I've got a great answer to your question, other than I think, be honest, as honest as you can with the admissions folks you're dealing with. They appreciate that. And oftentimes they'll work with you, and if you say to them, look, I am thinking about this other school, and, there's, for instance, I've had situations where students have said, I want to go visit the school. Their visitation weekend is a week after your deadline. What should I do? I tell them, look, if you talk to our admissions folks, sometimes they'll work with you on it. And oftentimes we can't accommodate that. So it just kind of depends on, it's like real estate. Everything's a negotiation. It's all about leverage, right? Who has the leverage? Right now, I think on the whole, students kind of have the leverage on programs, graduate programs. So I think exercising that leverage in a way that provides you as the applicant, while at the same time not causing harm to your personal brand is the whole key. And that's what we do as real estate professionals every day. I mean, that's the game. It's no different, applying to a graduate program.
So the goal though would be not get waitlisted, right?
That's exactly right.
So let me ask this.
The goal is not get waitlisted and offer for them to pay for school for you. That's the ultimate goal, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. So for those students who want to avoid the wait list, they're 100% committed to the university. Actually, so in the graduate real estate program that Michael and I attended, there's a kind of unspoken secret about how you can greatly increase your chances of admission. That is, visit campus, right? New York, where we went to grad school, is up in the middle of nowhere. It's deep winter, and you show a genuine interest simply by taking the bus to Ithaca, New York in the dead of winter. Right? For UNC and maybe other programs that are perhaps easier to get to, or that isn't the magic bullet that it is at the Baker Burton Real Estate. What are some things that students can do that genuinely show that interest besides just saying it, right? Because they may say it, but does the admissions committee believe it? So how do you show that you really mean it?
Right, that's true. Well, visiting is absolutely. I think whether it's there, Philadelphia, or Los Angeles, here in Chapel Hill, you should absolutely visit. For me, if a student doesn't go and visit a program, I discount them heavily in terms of enrolling. I have a hard time believing that people are going to enroll in a place where they haven't gone and spent significant time. And it's just a huge signaling mechanism, right? Yeah. And if you don't know where you're going to live, there's basic things that you have to. You're going to spend 2 years or a year, whatever it is, someplace. And one of those is like housing, and if you haven't been in a classroom. So visiting is huge. I agree with that. I think talking to our alums, is another great signaling mechanism. And oftentimes those alums will then become advocates for you and put a note into admissions because they know the admissions personnel. They went through the process themselves. And if they talk to a really strong prospective student, they'll send a note, whether it's to me and ask me to forward to admissions, or they'll send it directly to admissions and say, hey, I talked to this guy or this lady, and they're keen and Flagler material, and I'd love to see them in the program. And, let me know if there's other things I can do to help bring them to Chapel Hill. That's a great way to do a couple of things. Number one, to build your network. And then number two, to show admissions, I'm serious and I'm talking to other people and I'm really getting the behind the scenes information. I'm doing my diligence, on the program. Talking to current students is another great way to do that. And a lot of times somebody and then send a message to the admissions office and say, I met with so-and-so and I'd love to see them here as first years, next year or whatever it might be. So I think meeting with as many people associated with the program as you can. If the school has a big center, like here at the Wood Center, or whether it's, where you guys went or elsewhere, that's another great thing to do is meet with those center participants and the staff there, try to meet with faculty. All of those things show interest, right? And if you can't meet with them, get on the phone with them. I'm probably on the phone at least 4 or 5 times a week, if not more, with prospective students, just helping them understand the program, what we do, how we do it, the different career paths that are open to them coming out of a place like Keene and Flagler. So that's just huge. If you can't visit, talk to people and talk to as many people from the community as possible, students, alums, faculty, staff, whoever you can. And I think all that will get back to admissions in some form or fashion, if only through when you meet with your interviewer or you have an interview remotely, you're able to speak to some of those conversations. That shows that you have genuine interest and are likely to enroll if they admit you.
Okay, so let's imagine you've been admitted. All right, so you applied, you've been admitted. You're signed up, you send in your deposit, you're excited to get started. What are some things that those students can do prior to arriving on campus to prepare themselves for a 2-year MBA?
Yeah, so the first thing I tell them is to get on your website and ingest every piece of information that Adventures in CRE has. Every page. Catalog every page and just do it.
You're good at what you do, Jim.
I'm not joking. I am not joking. It's a great resource for them. So, there's a couple things they need to understand. One is, as we talked about earlier, geographically oriented. And especially in the development game, if you want to be a developer, you got to think about what markets that you want to work in, and you need to start to understand those market dynamics. And whether that's looking at the local business journals, BizNow, Globe Street, however you get that information, those are all, great sources for deals that come out every day. I also tell them NAREIT, right, has that great smart brief that they put out every day around noontime. It's a free newsletter, aggregates all the top messages, all the top stories from the day. Those are great kind of data sources to be able to become conversant, right, in different markets or different deals that are happening. Another thing that they can do is to start to understand how these models work, which again is why I send them back to your website, because you guys have just some unbelievable resources there on how to think about taking real estate deals and put them in how to think about taking real estate deals and put them into a form that we can test different assumptions on and figure out what those returns might look like. And you guys just do a spectacular job of making that very accessible to students that are coming into the program. We, like most programs, we give them training in that regard, but if the more that they learn from you guys, the better they're going to be in the classroom when they get here. So I love that. I think looking at job postings and trying to understand what are the different skill sets, backgrounds, capabilities, associated with whether it's development path, the investment path, asset management, brokerage, whatever that might be, is a really good exercise that allows you to kind of map, what those job descriptions require to what your current, profile looks like, and to really get a handle on, okay, I'm going to spend the next year, 2 years, developing a type of deal or this particular type of environment because it seems to be something that's important to prospective employers. So whether it's you guys' job site or select leaders or something like that, there's a lot of different ways that you can go and look and see what employers are considering. Again, that's just a really good kind of self-assessment you should do before you come into a program. Your biggest challenge as a graduate student is time. It's your limiting factor. And so the more efficient you can be with that time, which means the less exploration you have to do once you get here, the more exploration you can do before you get here, that's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you guys would both agree with that. Is you go through these programs and the opportunities are endless. I mean, whether it's in real estate or other areas, or even just like the wine club or something crazy like that, right? You can go and spend countless hours doing a lot of different things. You really have to be disciplined on what you want to get out of a program. You're paying a lot to be there. You can get out of a program. You're paying a lot to be there. You've got to figure out how you're going to spend your day. And the more prep work you can do before you show up here, in terms of knowing what you want to get out of the program, the better off you're going to be. The less flailing I think you'll do.
And how about the network, right? How do these students plug into the network before they've even arrived on campus? Or should they? Should they wait until they're there? Or
that's a good question. That depends. Like a lot of things in life, that depends. Some students, about 2/3 of our students have some exposure to real estate before they come into school, and so for those students, they can go into a conversation and somebody can start talking about cap rates and they understand exactly what's happening, right? Or somebody's talking about NOI and they know exactly what that means. But there are other students that come in that have had zero exposure to the industry, and so they really need to learn the basic lingo and the terminology. For the students that are conversant, I think it's fine for them to go ahead and start connecting with our alumni now. And particularly, we get a lot of students out of New York or DC, which is stick with our alums. So part of the role that I play here within the Wood Center is connecting prospective students with alumni in those markets so they can start to not only understand, all right, what is the value of a Keenan Flagler MBA, but also what does the alumni community look like and who else should I be talking to build that network. So I'm fine with that for students that are necessarily pure career switchers. I think if you're a career switcher, pure career switcher, it's hard to do that, right? Because it's very intimidating to go into somebody's office or to meet somebody for coffee and they're kind of talking to you about what they do on a daily basis, and you're looking at them like, I have no idea what this person is really. I understand they go get coffee at 10 a.m. and outside of that, I don't know.
I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I think on those, it's a little bit harder for those individuals. I recommend current students, group, those aren't potential employers. So interacting with our current students, and again, that's part of my role here is connecting prospective students with current students. There's some books that you can read, although I haven't really encountered a real estate book that I think really encapsulate what happens on a day-to-day basis. It's really, I think, hard to teach real estate, out of a textbook. It's a very much an experiential type of environment. And then, following deals and just generally tracking markets. I think the more conversant you are when you show up, the easier it's going to be to network in. But I think networking is key, right? It's the key to the New York real estate job search. We haven't really touched on this, but one of the big differences in recruiting in real estate versus consulting or marketing or some of the other traditional graduate pathways is it's a murky type of recruiting process. It's not where 6 employers are going to show up and process. It's not where 6 employers are going to show up and they're going to take 80% of the people within consulting that year at that school. I mean, here in any given year, we're going to have 30 to 35 different employers show up, and none of them are going to take more than 1 or 2 students. And so, trying to navigate that and understand how those employers fit into your network and how do you connect with them, it takes a lot of time and effort and energy. So the more conversant you are and the more that you can start to network, the better off you're going to be in recruiting as well.
Yes.
Awesome. Well, this has been absolutely amazing. In fact, we're extremely grateful for all the transparency, a lot of great information here. I mean, whether, even for students, for people pivoting, whatever the case may be, you're a wealth of information. We really appreciate you being on the audio series. In parting, is there anything in summary?
The only thing I would say, well, number one, spend as much time at Adventures in Commercial Real Estate as possible. But number two, real estate is a really large industry, right? And there's a lot of different places that you can go, not just geographically, but in terms of pathways. And so spend some time talking to people about their careers and the different paths that they've taken. Be open to new opportunities in that. We talked a lot about asset management today, which doesn't typically come up, but that's an example of, I bet if people went and they talked to folks in the industry, those stories would be uncovered. They spend time in that group. In fact, a lot of times now people will talk about, they spend time in a workout group during a recession, right? In the Great Recession. And that was kind of transformational for them, kind of analogous to the asset management type of environment. So I think do as much exploring, as much relationship building as you can. And then the other thing I would say is don't take it all that seriously. It's a fun exploring, as much relationship building as you can. And then the other thing I would say is don't take it all that seriously. It's a fun industry, people like to work with other people that are, fun to be around. So, make sure that you treat everybody well and don't ever burn any bridges. It's a small world in some sense. Oh, yeah. And, real estate is a relationship business. So do the best you can and be the best person you can. And at the end of the day, try to have some fun with it. And I think generally speaking, you'll be successful. And the same goes for applying to a graduate school. Have fun with it. Don't stress out too much. Try to get to know people through the process. And I think at the end of the day, most people end up pretty happy.
Well, that's great advice. Thank you so much once again for being on the audio series. We really appreciate it. And until the next episode, we will see you guys next time.
Thanks, Jim. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having me. Really, really had fun.
Thanks for additional resources. Head over to www.adventuresincre.com/audio series. Would you like to learn real estate financial modeling in a matter of weeks and do it with zero guesswork? If so, the A.CRE Accelerator is for you. The Accelerator is a step-by-step, case-based program designed to teach you exactly what you need to know and in the order you need to know it, so you can gain both the knowledge and experience to take your career to the next level. To see if the Accelerator is right for you, go to www.adventuresincre.com/accelerator.